As we entered 2021, when the jabs had been started rolling out, as I mentioned earlier, my life has revolved around sport. I watch a lot of sport. I don't watch a lot of television unless it's sport. And I'm watching a lot of sport, and I'm seeing a lot of sports people starting to collapse on the field of play. Not only that, but in football matches up and down the country here in England, games were being stopped because of medical emergencies in the crowd. Something that I'd never really witnessed in my time, 17 years as a professional footballer. So, I thought, I need to do something about this, and I contacted the Professional Footballers Association, the Players' Union, and I voiced my concerns to them. They put me onto the doctor at the Football Association because they didn't want to deal with it. They shoved me off towards the doctor at the FA, said speak to her. So I did. I spoke to Charlotte Cowie, Dr. Charlotte Cowie at the FA, and had a conversation with her, and I voiced my concerns about what was happening, and she tried to palm me off with the usual response, oh, it's always happened, it just never has this much publicity normally. That's bullshit for a start. And I wasn't particularly pleased about that. So I continued to watch my sport, and I continued to see people collapsing on the field of play, young, fit athletes, and I was getting more and more frustrated as to why there was no investigation being taken place. In fact, in November of 2021, I tweeted this tweet, and it said, hey, FIFPro. Now, FIFPro is the Professional Footballers Worldwide Union. I tweeted, hey, FIFPro, are you not a little bit concerned about how many of your members are suffering heart problems during matches? And if you are, what action are you taking on behalf of them? And I kid you not, within 5 minutes, my phone rang. And I thought, I recognise that number. And the name that appeared, Bobby Barnes. Now, Bobby was a contemporary of mine. We played football about the same time. He went on to work at the Professional Footballers Association for many years, and I thought he was still there. And so I picked up the phone and said, hi, Bob. He said, Matt, he said, just saw your tweet. And I went, oh, yeah? He said, yeah, he said, I'm now the head of FIFPro. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I said, so you read it then? He said, yeah, I read it. I said, what do you think? He said, well, he said, this kind of stuff has always happened. He said, we've got all the data here, all this kind of stuff has always happened. He said, but you just never really heard about it. And I went, Bobby, I'm going to stop you right there. I said, I'm going to ask you a question. I said, during your playing career, I said, did any players that you played with or against, did any of them in your playing career ever have to leave the field of play because they collapsed with a heart issue? And he stopped for a minute and he thought. After a couple of seconds, he said, well, he said, you know, there was Marc-Vivien Foé. He said, there's Fabrice Muamba. And I went, I'm going to stop you there, Bobby. I said, because me and you played at the same time. I said, I know for a fact both those two players happened after we finished playing. I said, and the reason you can name them is because it was such a rare occurrence. So I'm going to ask you again, during your career, did you ever come across anybody who had to leave the pitch because they had heart problems? And he went, no. And I went, right, thank you very much. So I'm watching football and I'm seeing this massive increase. I said, so you must be seeing it as well. I said, so I think it's incumbent upon you and your organisation to do something because you're the representative, you're the union for these footballers. And something's happening here that isn't normal. You need to sort it out. And the phone call ended. Not a lot happened in terms of FIFPro. And I played golf with two current Premier League footballers in the summer. And both of them admitted to me that at their football clubs, two separate football clubs, that only about 50% of all their players were jabbed. Now, the media had been telling us that 95% of all Premier League players had been vaccinated. And these two guys at this club said to me, it's probably 50-50. So I thought, well, that's pretty interesting.